Hello, in this video we are going to look at HTML attribute. My name is Mohindo Mubarak and I'm your tutor tonight. So the HTML ID attribute is used to specify a unique ID for an HTML element. You cannot have more than one element with the same ID in an HTML document. So in each HTML document, there must be at least only one element with a certain ID. You cannot have more than one ID in an HTML element. So we can say we use IDs to uniquely identify particular elements into our HTML element. Into our HTML document. So using the ID attribute, the ID attribute specifies a unique, already said that, and must be written within a HTML document. The ID attribute is used to point to a specific style declaration in style sheet. It is also used by JavaScript to access and manipulate the element in the specific with a specific ID. So the following example will have a h1 tag element that will point to the certain ID called my header. So let's go ahead and look at that. So I'm going to open our project. This is it, and I'm going to create this file named. I'm going to create a file that I'm going to use to do what? To practice the ID. So I'm going to come here and right click and say new file. I can just simply click on this plus. I can say new file. I'm going to name it as 21, right? And then dot underscore HTML ID.html. So in that, I'm going to put here my HTML tag, and I'm going to call this one ID. Okay, HTML ID. Okay, so we use this HTML ID to uniquely specify a certain element. For example, I can have here my h1, and I can say this is my heading. Okay, so after doing that, and then you can have maybe a simple UL, and then I can say li. Maybe I can say what I'm going to do today, go to office. Maybe we can come here, reply emails, work on my project, have lunch break, record some videos, go back to home. Okay, that's my simple schedule. For example, I can say this is ordered list. Okay, so yeah, it means that this is only a single element, so I can identify here a single element. So I can say here, give it an ID and say my heading. Okay, let's open this one in the browser and we see how it looks like. So I'll create here a browser and then press Ctrl O, and then you select HTML element ID. HTML ID. So there we are, and that's our simple routine. So let's go ahead. You can say this is my routine today. Okay, my today's routine, or whatever. So if I want now to point at this ID using CSS, so what I'll do, I'll have to first write our style tag here in the head, style, and then we say, so for class we could use dot to define a class, but here if you want to point at ID, you use hash or pound like that, and then give the ID name, and then open the curly brackets and do what you want. So I can say background color black, and then I can say color white. Okay, so by doing that, it will point at this ID and then take the actions. Come and refresh, boom. Can you see? This is my routine, and it is has been worked upon accordingly. So I can as well put a dot. If I put a dot, then it means it will be considered a class, and there's no class which is having this as a class. I mean, there's no an element which is having my ID as a class. So that is how we create ID, and there must be only a single ID. I mean, a certain ID must be used only in a single element in the whole document. So if you want to, for example, to give this one also an ID, so I can say ID, and I can call it break. So I can come here and say hash, then I give the ID called break, and I can say background color maybe yellow, like that. So if I come and refresh, we'll have that as yellow. So that's how we use IDs. However, you cannot have more than one ID on the same in the same document. Okay, so that's it for today. Let's meet in the next video where we're going to look at HTML iframes. I hope you'll not miss.